Dialogue at the Wilson Center is a production of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. And now here's your host, John Molesky.
Hello and welcome to the Wilson Center in Washington, D.C. Each week, Dialogue explores the world of ideas and issues in international affairs, history, and culture. This week, we meet two filmmakers whose new short feature premieres this month at the Environmental Film Festival in the nation's capital. Sean Peoples is a program associate and multimedia editor with the Wilson Center's Environmental Change and Security Program and the Global Sustainability and Resilience Program. Michael Miller is an Emmy-nominated producer and the founder of Think Out Loud Productions. Together, they've produced the film Healthy People, Healthy Environment, Integrated Development in Tanzania. We'll be sharing some of that film with you in a minute. And gentlemen, welcome to Dialogue at the Wilson Center. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And Sean, I want to begin with the topic selection. And if you could do two things for us. Tell us, what do we mean by integrated development? What's the topic mean? And then why you decided that film treatment was the way to approach it.
Sure. Integrated development looks at different things like population, health, and environment, and how you can take a multi-sector approach to improving the lives of people in rural communities like the one we visited, and connecting these issues instead of a single sector approach, just looking at a way to improve the environment. Mm-hmm. So I think with an integrated approach, you get a harmony that you didn't have before, and in some ways it's cheaper.
So what an educator might call multidisciplinary or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. And why the notion that a film is the way to approach this subject matter? Who are you trying to reach?
That's a good question. I think for us, we want to put the audience kind of in that village and show how this work is done and give them a little bit clue on how the dollars that they send to our government are being spent, our foreign policy dollars. I mean, really getting a glimpse into how the lives of these people we spend time with, how they go about it and how they're trying to improve their own lives.
Yeah. Michael, how did you get involved in the project?
I had worked with Sean previously, and they were working on this project and called me up, and it sounded like a great opportunity and really important work that was being done. So that's how I got involved.
Is there a common thread in the type of subject matter you've worked on in your filmmaking career?
Yeah, I mean,
in other words, I'm trying to figure, is this something that was new to you or something that is right in line with the type of vision you've had for the...
Well, I've worked on films that highlight international development projects before,
okay.
And deal with, health and conservation issues. But, with each project, you go in and, as you were asking Sean about what exactly is this project, that's sort of what we try and figure out ahead of time. But, it's something that you don't really understand until you get there. On the ground, and you actually see some of these projects, and there's just like a light bulb that goes off in your head where you're like, oh, okay, this is what they mean. This is actually the work that's being done. And so I think that's what as a filmmaker and a communicator, the challenge is to try and share that aha moment with with people who aren't familiar with the work and aren't familiar with the area.
And Tanzania as the focus of integrated development, any particular reason that this country lends itself to this project versus some other location that is also involved with integrated development?
Sure. Well, all over the world there are these PHE integrated programs, and we're looking at global population growth at about 9 billion in 2050. And if you start to drill down what that looks like on a country level, by 2100, Tanzania is going to be 7 times its size in population.
7 times?
Yeah, so you're going to look at a place like Tanzania and some of these rural remote villages who don't have access to holistic health care. They are living off of subsistence livelihoods. They're looking around them and they're saying, well, we need to exist, we need to cook our meals, so firewood from a forest and things. So some of these remote villages don't necessarily have the tools to grow in a sustainable way. And so this approach really tries to empower the villages themselves to grow sustainably.
I don't know how to quantify this, but if you could help us understand how primitive we're talking about as far as access to resources within a village.
Well, just if you take the example of Mike and I getting to this
and then also
district.
Just to do the type of work you did in an environment like this as well.
Right, and it's a challenge to get to some of these areas, just to tell the story. So if you start to walk that back to why Pangani district, Bagamoyo district in Tanzania, it's a challenge to get then a ton of health services supplies out to these remote villages. And
you can't forget something and run to the local Radio Shack, right?
No, exactly.
Well, I mean, our trip was significant in more ways than just making the film. I mean, the doctor who spent time with us there
Dr. Alay. I don't think he was initially supposed to be with us, and go to some of the places that we went to, but because, we had a four-wheel drive automobile that was going to some of these spots, he was like, this is a good opportunity for me to go and visit this village that I haven't been to in a while, to see patients that I need to follow up with. So it really, highlights, how...
You thought you were shooting a film and you were delivering healthcare.
And in some ways.
Well, in some ways, this was his only chance to get out and talk to some of the peer educators he taught, the people in the communities that, he's a doctor, so he's also able to communicate with the folks in these remote villages how they're doing and if they need any care, and what coming from maybe the central town, what we can send out the next time we come out. So it's an interface that's needed.
How did you find your subjects, the people that you're going to film, talk to, interview?
We had a lot of partners without which this film would not have been made, and one of the big partners was a group called Balanced here in Washington, D.C. They look at doing integrated development on the ground. The Tanzania Coastal Management Project in Tanzania was the partner on the ground doing a lot of that work as well. So they helped us through, they helped us find people who were really dynamic, who could actually kind of express what this project meant to them, and really give us a sense of how it's changed their lives.
And logistics is a big part of any production. What are the logistical challenges in planning ahead? Again, the things we already previewed, you can't forget things because you won't have an opportunity to get them easily. Was this very different in that regard from things you've worked on in the past?
No, it was similar to other projects, and
so you've been to other
countries.
remote locations. And
yeah, and as Sean was saying, having good partners, doing good pre-production is always key. Yeah. But no matter how well you plan, something is going to go wrong. So,
do you have a story to tell in that regard?
Thankfully, nothing major. Just little equipment
minor
glitches, and you think you're going one place on one day, but then you end up going to another place. Because maybe the road's out, or there's just sort of a change of plans. So you have to be able to kind of roll with the punches, and also follow the story too. I would say that we had some folks that we were planning on talking to beforehand, which was great, and then we just met some people in the field who turned out to have really great stories to share. So I think you have to be conscious of those opportunities, and always be ready to follow the story.
And a project like this too, just to add, when you are able to go into community and not necessarily know, but meet people who are touched by some of the work on the ground, that's, I think, for us was another aha moment where you actually see that you don't have to look too far to get people to actually sing the praises of why this has worked, why it's impacted their lives. So.
Well, let's take show our viewers and share audio, at least the audio, with our listeners, the first clip, and take a look, and then we come back and talk about it.
Okay.
In the last decade, Tanzania's sustained economic growth, political stability, and considerable natural resources have made it a beacon for East Africa. But despite economic gains, high rates of poverty persist in the country's rural coastal communities, where access to quality healthcare is limited.
Well, let me just say, beautifully shot.
Thank you.
Let me compliment you on that. It looks terrific. Your narrator in country, or
she's here? She's local.
Yeah.
Local.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's out of Richmond, and I've actually worked with her on a couple projects. She's great. Miriam Leshampiro. If anybody needs her info, contact me and I'll hook you up.
And now, and describe to us who are the protagonists that you get to meet in this film? Who are the people that you chose, and who you talk to, and who we see doing things like with the cook stove, which we'll talk about when we see the next clip?
Sure. We focus on three women, Rukia, Mahija, and Fadea. These women are peer educators in their villages. They're folks who are investing in clean cook stove, improving the livelihoods of the fellow villagers as well. And they're kind of the nodes. They're the personalities that actually, I think, encapsulate the PHE approach. And I think you really need these strong, dynamic people in village to buy into that approach and to also communicate it to their fellow villagers. So I think we took three of the strongest people we spent time with over the week, and really tried to tell as much as we could, given the short schedule, their stories.
Mm-hmm.
This notion of the cook stove, let's look at the clip first, and then we can actually see it, and then we could tell people what it's all about.
Definitely.
Along with the health and environment benefits, the energy-saving stove affords more time to focus on improving livelihoods and generating income, especially for women. Rukia, a peer educator on topics as diverse as savings and loans, reproductive health, and conservation, has gone from owning an energy-saving stove to selling bread and honey. The proceeds from sales allowed her to afford a new roof for her house.
Enzi za zamani wazazi walikuwa tuseme walikuwa wakina mama hawana haki. Halafu pia ilikuwa hakuna biashara za kujihangaisha. Kwa sasa hivi kidogo tunashukuru, hasa tunashukuru TCMP. Toka alipoingia katika kijiji chetu kutoboa miradi, kina mama tumeamka tuko mbele.
One thing that struck me when I watched it for the first time is how low-tech a solution is that we're talking about.
Totally, and I think that's part of this approach as well. I mean, you want to have it community-led. So what are the challenges in this community? And the PHE approach is a set of tools. It's not going to be an NGO coming in and saying, here's what you need. This is what do you need? And let's try to figure it out from there. And it seemed like this area in Tanzania had some challenges with folks taking wood from the national forest that was there, that was not sanctioned, and really degrading the forest. So how do you, what's changing here? You need to cook, but if you can go from 9 pieces of wood down to 3 a day or 3 a week, then you're really making an impact not only on the forest itself, but that stove itself improves indoor air quality. It's actually a plan that you can sell yourself, so you can make it into a livelihood generating thing. Rukia can sell that plan to a fellow villager to get more income for her money or her business. So it's very dynamic.
Yeah, this overlap benefit, the fact that she's running a small business essentially out of her home with this fairly simple device.
Right, and at the center of a lot of this is it's empowering. It's empowering women. And I think, again, what's the challenge in this community? But on the whole, how can we then empower them to flourish?
I think Mahija, who's one of the first characters that we meet in the film, really illustrated that when we met her, because talking about the amount of time that she had in her day, now that she didn't have to go, walk many miles to get extra wood, was pretty amazing, and what she could do with that time in terms of, creating more economic opportunities for herself.
These simple efficiencies that we might take for granted, but that it could be life-changing.
Exactly.
Life-changing. Well, what we're going to do, gentlemen, now is we're going to take a brief break, and then when we come back, we'll talk a little more, and we'll look a little more at your work, see a few more clips.
Right.
We'll be back in just a moment. Please stick around.
The Wilson Center is America's living memorial to its 28th president, connecting the world of policymaking to practical options derived from the world's finest ideas, research, analysis, and honest, nonpartisan conversation. Visit us on the web at wilsoncenter.org. And now we return to more dialogue at the Wilson Center.
Welcome back to Dialogue at the Wilson Center. We'll continue our discussion with Sean and Michael about their film project in Tanzania. And gentlemen, when we left, we were talking about the economic benefits, the life-changing aspects of this. It's not just a simple tool. How widespread is this? Even calling it technology sounds a little bit overblown. I'm really impressed at the simplicity of it. It seems like it has great potential because of its simplicity. How widespread is it currently?
Well, I think not only some of these really simple interventions, but also the dynamic integrated approach itself is spreading. Ethiopia, as the government itself has bought in, and projects within Ethiopia are really flourishing because the government itself has really bought into that approach. Philippines is another place as well. But again, you want to look at these remote places. I mean, that's where the access is really limited. That's where subsistence livelihoods are really taking place. So they're really, feeding themselves off the land. They're making their money off the land. So, so it's very targeted, which is a good thing. But I think with this film, we're hoping to see how can this scale up. How can this go maybe at a more regional level? Maybe having the success stories that we look at here with this project in Tanzania, and spreading the word throughout sub-Saharan Africa.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll add just anecdotally that when we were with Mahija, again, one of the characters in the film, she shared with us a book. It was basically a ledger that she had of all the different people in her village who she had shown how to build these more efficient cook stoves. It was pretty amazing. It was several pages worth of people. So
It was 143.
Was it? Yeah.
Are materials provided for people when they learn how to build the stoves? You said that the directions on how to do it. Do they receive materials as well?
I'm not sure.
Or can it be done with local materials?
But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I think
yeah.
that's the emphasis is what's the local.
There's no extra thing that
Gotcha.
you need to make it happen.
Did you encounter any resistance? And I'm thinking in terms of, I know the next clip we're going to look at speaks to overfishing, for example. And in many cases, all over the world, in any culture, there's often resistance to change because there's been a traditional way of doing things. Did you encounter any resistance to this, or does this seamlessly fit with traditions and approaches that are already in place?
Well, I mean, I think the fishermen that we spoke to several fishermen, and each of them, recognized that there was a problem with overfishing. I mean, it was impacting them because even though maybe they used, what they would describe as bad fishing practices, bombing, poisoning, things like that, they admitted that they were doing that out of necessity, or maybe having limited resources to pursue other avenues for fishing, and that overall that was impacting the fishing industry because there was no more fish, and it was impacting their livelihoods. So I don't think there was
necessity, the mother of invention. It sounds is what you're describing
Right.
here. When it's not working, try something different.
right. So there wasn't resistance in that sense. I don't know if.
I don't think so. I mean, but also you're looking at areas of the country that are male-dominated. So, and one of the things I think this approach is getting at is, all right, well, how do we even that out? How do we balance that out a little bit better? How do we empower women with livelihood-generating activities that aren't necessarily relying on, degrading the environment, but also getting them to be at an equal footing with their counterparts, the men here.
Well, we've referenced it. Now let's take a look at the next clip.
Overfishing has become a problem. To keep up with increased consumption and make money, fishermen turn to exploitative and unsustainable practices.
Ni kutumia baruti ndio uvuvi ambao unaharibu mazingira, na kutia dawa uvuvi haramu ule, sumu ndio uvuvi ambao unaharibu mazingira.
Helping to alleviate the need for exploitative fishing is the environmentally sound practice of seaweed cultivation. As an alternative livelihood, women in Pangani and Tanga districts cultivate plots along the nearby shores. It provides these women with a cash income roughly double what a family might earn from other, more environmentally destructive activities.
This, I don't think we've used the word yet, but we're talking about sustainability here. Correct?
I think so. I think that's at the center of this as well. I mean, how do you take a community that at this point isn't growing sustainably and give them the tools to help them do that? That's what they want. It's not something that, again, is coming down from on high. It's how do we get the tools in this community to really organically give them and empower them to be more sustainable.
How urgent are the circumstances on the ground? When I'm thinking back to your initial response when we began the discussion about population growth and just the numbers game that we're looking at here. And so does that create a sense of urgency here, or is there time?
Absolutely. I think no matter what, this is a small community in a very large world, and we've got many like this throughout Sub-Saharan Africa, throughout Southeast Asia, wherever you can point to, I think, the same kind of need, just different circumstances. So I think it's urgent. I think we really need, and we need dynamic approaches. We can't just keep on going with a single sector approach and hoping that a conservation project will do more than it's really intended to do. We need to look at these people are living integrated lives. How do we have integrated solutions for them?
The people you worked with in the making of the film, did you sense urgency from them? Did they understand that they were part of something significant and important and with a clock ticking?
Certainly, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a great appreciation for some of the projects that we looked at, and I think that was born out of the fact that that they had seen the hard times and some of the challenges that they've been faced with have created that sense of urgency.
And in some ways, they're on the front lines of seeing the change.
Right.
They're the ones with the subsistence livelihoods where agriculture itself is changing dramatically due to climate change, due to any different set of factors, that they are the ones getting it first. I think for us, we're the ones deeper into the chain, when we feel those effects, it's the reverberations aren't as deep.
Right.
No, it's theoretical. It's not right in our faces in most cases.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The community structure, the infrastructure to help with training and with spreading the word. We talked about the individual efforts of one of your subjects in keeping her log of neighbors and friends and others that she's helped. But is there an infrastructure in place within these communities that can help spread the word and conduct the training?
I think that the central part of the sustainability after some of this initial setting up of giving the tools to these communities is peer educators. They're the people there who are going to, again, buy into this dynamic approach and also be the nodes through which their fellow villagers learn about some of the different tools that they can have, some of the the interventions that work in that village, and through someone who has taken the time to really, I think, take their experiences and speak the praises of why integration matters and why it can work for them.
And does that group of people exist, sort of the training of the trainers? Is there a critical mass of people who are engaged in that way?
Exactly. Well, each of the people that we highlight in the film that we spend time with, they're peer educators. Not only are they the pharmacy owners or the women who are they have a bread business, but they're the ones who are also then the peer educators. So these other fellow villagers are seeing, oh, well, this is where I can get to if I'm, if I kind of take in some of these integration tools into my life, and that's something to reach for.
And that speaks to the sustainability aspect of it too, I think, of the programs, because you have a peer educator that talks to two people and then they talk to two people, and it's a more organic way to spread the word and keep the programs going.
We have one more clip to share. Let's take a look and then we'll come back and talk about it.
The dynamics of these communities have begun to change.
The participation of women initially in Pangani was really poor, but after several trainings and the awareness campaigns in our activities regarding the theater shows and the mobile video units, we have been able to trigger some discussions, community dialogues, where women are now becoming active contributors and discussants of several development agendas in their communities.
Ninakuwa naeleweka na jamii, kwa sababu wale waliokuwa hawanifahamu vizuri sasa hivi wameniinua kwamba na mimi naeleweka katika kijiji, hata kwenye mikutano mikuu wananielewa, hata nikisimama nikizungumza kitu wananielewa kwamba mimi ni nani. Kwa hiyo ninajisikia na amani, kwa sababu nimepata elimu, nimepanua mawazo, akili na ufahamu wa kuweza kuzungumza na mtu yoyote. Na ndio maana ninaweza kuzungumza hata na wale wagonjwa wa VU bila shida yoyote.
Well, there's the great illustration of the empowerment aspect of this project. People feel good about themselves when they're involved in this kind of work.
Exactly, and I think it doesn't take too much. I just think it's, again, that empowering angle. How do we do that, and how do we do it at a community level?
Yeah, I want to ask you, in the time remaining, a little more about your strategy as far as getting the word out, sharing this film, the applications of it, and then also future projects. If this has now spurred something for you, Sean, and the Environmental Change and Security Program, where filmmaking might be a bigger part of the agenda moving forward. So let's start with the whole distribution plan. You're going to roll this out at this month's Environmental Film Festival. What happens then?
That's right. It'll play Tuesday at the Environmental Film Festival. I believe it's slated to be in a couple other festivals and screenings. Sean probably knows a little.
Sure. I think this is one of the first products of its kind for us. I mean, obviously, this is being done all over the place, but telling stories about the issue areas that we have been looking at for the last 15 years. So for us, this is kind of new territory, but we want to treat it like a film. We want to treat it in a way that we're sending it off to festivals and we're premiering it. It is short, so it has maybe a space to play in front of a longer documentary or something, but I think for us, the distribution is really important now to engage new audiences, looking at this PHE approach, looking at this community itself and seeing how maybe that can spur thought about spreading that.
Well, a human context is a powerful way to talk about any issue, and this is a powerful way to express that human context.
I think it's great the way that that the screenings are being organized too, with panel discussions, I mean, you have everybody in a room. They've watched a piece like this, and there's a lot of questions, a lot of thoughts, and having people like Sean there to be able to kind of address those and have a discussion is really great.
How will people who are watching this program or listening to it on the radio version, how can they find the film? How can they watch it?
Ultimately, this is going to live on the web. So we're going to have it on YouTube, I imagine. It's just a matter of timing, but for now, it's really how do we promote this and get it into the hands of people too who can spread the word in ways that amplifies the message even more. So we're really focused right now on how to promote this the right way.
So when you say on the web, you're talking about wilsoncenter.org?
wilsoncenter.org.
The place to start looking?
Exactly, and we have another, the Environmental Change and Security Program has a blog called The New Security Beat, and you'll be able to find it really easily there as well. So both resources.
Okay, great. And what about future projects? Has one been designated? Anything specific that you're going to be working on next?
Yeah, that's a good question. Michael and I right now are working on getting our plane tickets to Nepal from May 1st to the 20th.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to take another look in a completely different area at a PhD program, how they're doing it differently, and telling the story of that community as well.
And what's the timeline for that production?
We're hoping to, I think this summer is going to be good to just really take stock of the footage and by fall have another product on
Heavy
on the
editing
line.
time this summer.
We
In
gotta do it.
air-conditioned comfort, I hope,
Exactly.
gentlemen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. Congratulations on this project, and look forward to the future projects.
Thank you, John.
I think
Thank
you're into
you.
a great area here, and we'll look forward to more of it.
Thanks.
That's all for this edition of Dialogue at the Wilson Center. Until next week, I'm John Molesky. Thanks for joining us.
We'd like to hear from you. Please send your questions or comments to dialogue@wilsoncenter.org. You can also follow us on Facebook. Search Dialogue Television and Radio. Our host's Twitter feed is twitter.com/John Molesky. Dialogue is a co-production of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars and MHZ Networks. Dialogue is available via broadcast, cable, satellite, and telco on MHZ Worldview throughout the United States. To see how to watch where you live, visit www.mhznetworks.org.
The dialogue continues on Facebook. Join us by visiting our page. Search Dialogue at the Wilson Center. You can also connect with us via Twitter by following @John Molesky. Finally, check out all the latest videos from the Wilson Center on YouTube at Woodrow Wilson Center.